Welcome to Wednesday Walks Together. My name is Mark Long, rector of the parish of St Andrew in Newlands, Cape Town. Today is the 25th of November. It marks the beginning of the 16 days of activism around gender-based violence and femicide. I'm part of the Western Cape Religious Leaders Forum, and together with the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative, we launched a campaign this morning to address these particular issues in our society, and not just in our society, but also within our faith-based organizations. For me, it's all goes back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 27. They're verses that really underline our need to find ways to live differently together, to reflect our true nature as created by God. And these verses say the following. The first half of 26 says, "Then God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness." Verse 27 goes on to define that further. "So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." There's a wonderful sense in these verses that even in our diversity as male and female, we reflect the image of God. There's nothing in these verses that suggests that men in any way reflect the image of God more than women, or women more than men. And yet so much of our social construct, even our faith outlook, tends towards a patriarchal outlook. And we have to find ways to combat that. We have to find ways to move forward differently. We need to, on every level, address discrimination wherever we find it. And of course, when we touch on discrimination, when it's brought, certainly whenever it's brought to my attention that I may be being discriminatory, that my attitudes may be making others around me feel that they are less than me, or that I see them as being less than me. It's a very painful awakening when that is pointed out. It's been a painful year with COVID-19, as these issues have just been highlighted so much more clearly than they have in previous years. We've seen the whole issue around Black Lives Matter and the importance of taking a clear stand, an unequivocal stand in terms of anti-racism. And just saying that anything that makes us seem different on a racial level is unacceptable. And as we go into these 16 days of activism, and my prayer is that we won't stop at the end of 16 days, we'll continue to be activist in the way we address these issues, really highlights the manner in which patriarchal attitudes so often leave women in a very, very vulnerable place in our society. And I have to acknowledge that the church and other religious institutions and organizations certainly carry some responsibility in this. We have not taught Genesis 1, 26 and 27 with any sense of definitive clarity over the years. And I think part of the ongoing impact of patriarchal issues that result in gender-based violence, that result in femicide, that result in women being treated as in some form less than men, is a real indictment upon faith organizations, and particularly upon us as church, in terms of our own Christian heritage and the Judeo-Christian scriptures that we draw on. We have to find ways to move forward, and part of it is acknowledging that we haven't got it right. Part of it is awakening to the fact that actually we need to move forward. And part of it is trusting that the Spirit of God is with us to give us the strength and resources to turn ourselves around, to begin to behave differently, to think differently, and thereby to really allow our actions to demonstrate a far more whole picture of who we are as human beings, and in fact present a far more whole picture of who God is. Because if we carry the image of God, the way we treat each other has to reflect that. Now, in terms of gender-based violence, clearly men also experience violence, but without any doubt, women in our society are in huge danger, experience gender-based violence in very deep and painful ways. And we're really at a point where we need to say women matter, or women's lives matter. Full stop. We find it easy to come up with but. And I think where we're tempted to put the but in, we need to remind ourselves that to say women matter or women's lives matter isn't to say that men don't matter. Society for millennia has said that men do matter, to the point where women have been injured through that attitude. And so to emphasize the fact that men matter just adds to the pain that women in our communities, societies, our families, the more intimate relationships we have, continue to really experience that pain. It was the same with anti-racism. To say all black lives matter wasn't to say that all lives don't matter, but right at the moment, people of color are hurting and need our attention. I'd like to say right at the moment, as we consider gender-based violence, women in particular are hurting. Not only hurting, but dying. And the real tragedy of lockdown, certainly in South Africa, in terms of some of the statistics, is that something like 3/4 of acts of gender-based violence that were reported, 3/4 of those were affected in people's homes. If we cannot be safe in our homes, if women cannot be safe in their homes, what does that say about who we are as a society? And what, of course, does it say about who we are as people of faith? What does it say about us as church, that we have allowed male domination to continue as it has over such a huge length of history? It's time that we change, and we need to commit to that. Men need to commit to that in particular, and we need to seek to find ways to create safe spaces for our women, for women in our homes, in our institutions, in our society, in our world. Gender-based violence is not just endemic to the South African context, it is a global phenomenon. But God calls us, God gives us this incredible gift, as we've seen in Genesis, to be made in his image, all human beings. And no matter how we perceive ourselves, no matter how we put ourselves forward, no matter our gender, no matter our sexual orientation, none of that matters, because in it all, we carry this powerful image and reflection of God. We're made in the image of God. And so my prayer is, as we go into these next 16 days, but beyond that too, is that we may truly live that out, and that our commitment to equality in relationship may really begin to make a deep difference in the way that we live, and may make a deep difference, particularly at this time, to women and the pain that women continue to experience in our society and social constructs. And so let's hear the call of God, and let's have the courage to change, to be renewed, to be restored, and to create those safe spaces where women in particular at this time may know that they are truly safe.